Hello, in this video I want to talk about the smiling Christian, particularly the smiling evangelical Christians, because it does seem to be that's where the prominence is within evangelical Christians. I was a Jewish believer in Jesus for 42 years. I am not now, but I was for 42 years, and I've attended churches of all sorts of denominations and also the Catholic Church as well. So this smiling, the pressure and expectation to be smiling all the time is very much on the evangelical side, which has permeated into all the different denominations. The more evangelical you are, the more you are expected to be always cheerful. So one might presume at first thinking that this is a recent thing to do with evangelism, but I read a book by Doris Lessing some months ago. This was written in the 1920s, and there's a character in the novel, The Black Maid, and how she worded it, I can't remember the exact words verbatim, but it was like, and, Isabel, always smiling, the smiling Christian, always smiling as Christians always do. They always smile. They never stop smiling. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And this was the 1920s, 1930s, that she's always smiling. I think why Christians sort of smile so much is there are many reasons for it, and it's not necessarily that they're happy. Not necessarily that they're happy. So it's a case of exploring the possibilities, and then perhaps different people fit in different places. But there's no one answer to why they seem to be always smiling. I came to faith at the young age of 18. My late mother had passed away, so I was that. A year later, there was what's called in Judaism an unveiling. This is when the stone is laid in a cemetery, right? The stone is laid at the grave. Sorry, it's at the grave in the cemetery, right? So there's a little ceremony, and the rabbi is everything. I hadn't been to the funeral because in Judaism at that time, women weren't expected to go to the funeral. I mean, if I'd insisted, I could have done, but I was in too much of a no, I couldn't have coped with that. But I went to the unveiling. That was a year later. Now, really, for me, that must have been traumatic, but I hid the trauma of it by smiling. And I feel so ashamed about this because people must have just wondering what was the matter with me. Because I felt, as a Jewish believer in Jesus, I had to appear I could handle this, and that I wasn't upset, and that I was smiling and talking to hello, it's like a social, like you met up with people at a social group. And this is a very serious occasion. You are at the grave of, this was my late mother, and you're seeing the stone for the very first time, and who doesn't would get a bit upset, So I didn't. I was smiling because I'd probably seen other Christians, evangelical Christians, smiling, and I felt this is the way I had to behave, and that I'd be letting God down if I wasn't smiling. That I had to smile. This was part of being a Jewish believer in Jesus. I had to be smiling. And so this is a funeral. This is of my own dead mother. It's awful. I am not proud of it, but this is alert behaviour. This is alert behaviour. So I'd seen other people smiling all the time in sad circumstances. You just very sad things you'd hear, and So I felt I had to do the same. So I think one aspect of the smiling comes from learnt behaviour. If you're in a community, you're in an environment, you imitate, particularly like religion, how am I supposed to behave and things, and you see people smiling. You will see it's not uncommon, people going up. Can you imagine they've lost a husband or a relative or something, and they'll go up to the platform in front of the church, and they will be smiling, and saying how God has helped them with this bereavement. And this could be 3 weeks after the person has died, 2 weeks after the person has died, 10 days after a person has died. So a husband or wife has died, child has died, and they will be getting up there in front of a whole congregation, smiling on how God has given them peace in their hearts, and really how wonderful they feel. And you're thinking, well, isn't this a bit perverse, isn't it? Well, it is really. But this is quite the norm. Now, if you can imagine yourself, you're sitting in a congregation, you have never suffered a bereavement, right? You see this. You're scared to death of your mum dying or anybody dying that you know. It's terrifying. And then you see somebody saying, oh, God has given me peace, and they're smiling and seem so happy. Then that itself will make you perhaps consider embracing Christianity, because you think, well, if this person can smile a week after their husband's died like that, they're beaming and saying how wonderful they feel, then perhaps I should embrace this Christianity, because then if my mother dies, I will feel like that. I won't feel grief. I would argue somewhere within that argument there's an avoidance. There's an avoidance of wanting to go, well, nobody wants to go through grief, no, but there's an avoidance of going through grief, of crying and crying. And I can remember the next morning when I woke up after my mother died, and I woke up and then I suddenly realised my mother died the day before. You're sort of half asleep, and it was terrible, 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 terrible. And I do remember standing in front of that mirror and hardening myself and making the decision, I'm not going to show anything, I'm not going to show I'm upset and things. I'm not going to show anything. I've got to be strong. I mustn't show anybody. And that can't be very healthy, can it? Because surely it's normal and natural to be tearful if somebody's died. And then my father died, and I was working in a hotel, and the manager told me, and again it's just no reaction from me, and immediately I felt I had to go down to my friend and be, my father's just died. it's awful. I think she was different to me, because she was obviously had not taken on board that she had to be smiling all the time, maybe, but she was more upset. She was showing she was more upset about my father dying than I was. But this is because I was putting on an act. I felt I had to put on this act. I've had Christians tell me over the years that they are putting on an act, that inside they feel very, very depressed. But they feel that the culture demands that they must be smiling all the time. And so this can be a mask for not only for ordinary, just depression, upset, feeling sad, whatever. But it can be a mask even for clinical depression. I remember seeing a famous, decades ago, a famous Christian entertainer died. He was a very smiling man. Again, he was always smiling. He was known for smiling. That was part of his, thing. He was this person always smiling. His wife, I saw her on television, and there were a few people that being interviewed, and the first thing I noticed about her, she wasn't speaking, was how sad she looked. Everything, she just looked in the torment of grief, the terrible, torment of grief. Well, her husband's died, he's probably died 9 months ago, and she's been brought onto the programme to talk about him. And so it's bringing up all the feelings. So she's feeling very, very sad and 9 months isn't, it's not long. But as soon as the cameras were on her, she suddenly was like that. She was putting on an act. And a few years later, she admitted in an interview, I could see she was putting on an act. She admitted that she was putting on an act because she felt that she had to, as a Christian, she had to put on this act of being cheerful. One of the things within evangelical, they don't like people with long faces. They don't like you looking miserable. They don't like you looking sad. Even if you're in a lot of pain, you do not look sad. They don't like it. They disapprove of it. They would call it feeling sorry for yourself. They would say, well, there's people worse off than you. So you could be in dire pain with toothache, and they would expect you to be smiling and radiant and all of that. And they would probably say something like, well, there's people much more seriously ill than you are. It's just toothache. So they're expecting you to be always smiling, even when you're in pain. This is very, very hard to live in a culture where there's that expectation of you. I had a friend dying from cancer. It's horrible. All the things that come alongside with the cancer, it was horrible. Suffering terribly, terribly. And she said to me, I remember on the phone, she would ring me every day. She said, I feel I must glorify God. And I said, you're sick, just be yourself. I said, you're a lovely person, just be yourself. You don't have to try and, if you're in pain, you're in pain. You don't have to pretend you're not in pain and be smiling. I said, you're a lovely person. You don't, it's like, she has to feel, she has to behave smiling. She has to give this impression that despite having cancer, she's smiling because she feels she's letting God down if she isn't smiling while she's got cancer and all the horrible things with it, and she's intense pain, all the things, you all know, somebody with cancer. So she feels she's got to, if she shows any sign of pain or distress to anybody, or sadness, or you know what it's like when you're not well, that she will be letting God down, that he will be tut-tutting, that it's her role to look radiant and glowing and smiling and seeming that she's not affected by this illness and the pain and the agony, so that non-Christians will look at her and think, oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to put my faith in Jesus because she's smiling and glowing while she's dying from cancer. Right? And this is what they expect. And I'm speaking from the United Kingdom, and also this is compounded, made worse by the fact that in Britain, we don't like people having a long face. We don't like people showing negative feelings or emotions. We want people to be always bright. It doesn't matter what you're going through, you must be smiling and bright. Right? We don't do sadness. People don't like it. They just think, oh, you're feeling sorry for yourself. That's how people view it. if you're looking miserable, there wouldn't be like, oh, what's the matter? You look a bit sad. It's like, brighten up. What are you looking so miserable about? There's people worse off than you. This culture, the culture in the United Kingdom doesn't like people being miserable or being sad or showing anything like that. You have to be bright and cheerful in all circumstances. And so you've got in the newspapers people who are suffering the most terrible things, and they're all smiling in the photograph, and people love this and they look up to people like this. But I would argue a lot of this is an act. I remember listening to cancer people, a cancer group, a support group, and they're over bright. They're like 1,000-watt light bulbs, and they're all smiling, and it's the kind of being the kind of overdoing the cheerfulness to try and hide the sadness. Now, I know sometimes in life that can be helpful. I'm not saying I'm not saying we don't try to make an effort, but it does seem in this culture that you can't. The British culture is you cannot show distress or sadness. It's just not. People don't like it. You have to cheer people up when you're in dire agony. You have to be laughing and joking when you're in a great deal of pain. And so it's coming into evangelical Christianity again, the emphasis, you must be cheerful and bright because I remember hearing about a very well-known Christian preacher. He'd come over to the UK, putting on it was a conference, something in the UK, and I don't know if he'd employed some people as greeters, as people to do the registering. Do you know, he sacked a number of people. You know why he sacked them? Because they didn't look cheerful enough. He says, I want everybody to walk in that door and see smiling faces, and you're not smiling enough. So you can't register people for this conference. That is the pressure. Can you imagine? They're probably just ordinary people just registering. You know how you do at work, Oh, what's your name? And what did you say? But they don't want that. You mustn't just look like this. You say, hello, and what's your name? What did you say? You say, you've got, it's like over the top. It's sort of odd. It's over the top, and it's very hard, and that's what they're expecting of you. And it's very, very hard. And as I say, I have heard a number, tell me that they're putting on an act. I had a friend who she's, I'm putting on an act. Because I was telling her what I thought about all of this, and she said, she says, I do the same. This is what people expect. And so how do you break the culture? How do you break it all, you see? Because as people join evangelical Christianity, how should I behave? They see everybody else beaming and smiling when they just lost a newborn baby. It's surreal. Oh, I feel so at peace. And they're smiling. I'm glad they're at peace, but I'm thinking, is this healthy? I mean, you could be at peace, but don't, it's like, it is a bit odd. It is a bit odd. I wonder if part of it could be an avoidance of they don't want to grieve. They don't want to be in floods of tears. And they won't let you just walk around and be sad. And so I was always like this, the smiling. I was like this. And I think I thought at the back of my mind, if I'm always smiling and people see this positivity, always smiling and glowing, that they will want to believe in Jesus because because the idea is that you are representing Jesus, and so you mustn't have a long face, because then that's what's called a bad witness. In other words, people aren't going to want to become a Christian if they see you looking sad or upset or anything like that. They mustn't see you like that, because if they do, you are letting God down, you're letting Jesus down, and your job is to look serene and peaceful and everything, right? And then people will be so impressed with this serenity and this peacefulness and this everything else that they will then become Christians. And so there probably are many people that do become Christians basically on the fact of this actor or actress giving the impression they're in sort of permanent state of euphoria and happiness, and so they think, oh, I'd like to be like that, so they become a Christian, you see. And this is running away from reality, because you can believe in God and be sad. You can believe in God and be grumpy sometimes if you're in pain. You can, you're not letting God down if you've got terrible toothache and and you just get a bit irritable, don't you? A pain affects people in different ways. I tend to get irritable with pain, and I can get a bit short with people when I'm in pain. And I get short with people, and then I'll immediately apologise. I said, I'm sorry I'm shouting at you, but I'm in so much pain. You see, I often do that. I frequently do apologise to people, because I can get short with people because I'm feeling so ill. And often in the shops, things can get, you want something to be straightforward, a transaction, and there's a problem, and then there's another problem, and you're feeling ill, and all you want to do is get home, and you're feeling dreadful, and then I get irritable, and then I apologise, and I say, I'm so sorry for shouting at you, but I really don't feel well today. I'm sorry for shouting at you, but I feel so dreadful. And people are always nice. They say, oh, it's all right, it's all right. So I frequently apologise, because I know I do get irritable, I get a bit short, and it's simply because I am feeling so ill. I just want to return an item, get the refund, and go home as quick as possible to go to bed, because I'm feeling so ill. And there's a problem. Oh no, we need this, we need that. It's not going. We have to call the supervisor. And then I start losing it. And then I apologise. But you see, a Christian would judge me on that. They would say, you mustn't behave like that. You mustn't, it's like you're letting God down. That people are not going to want to, it's a bad witness, they're not going to want to believe in Jesus because they've seen this person getting irritable. With the at the cash, at the supermarket, and they think that's a bad witness. But what they don't realise is that person is actually in a lot of pain, and a lot of people, when they get in a lot of pain, do get irritable. You get short and things. So it's a very hard religion to live by, to live in a culture where you are being judged. And you are being judged. They tell you they're not judging you, but they are judging you because they have an expectation of a behaviour. And the behaviour is you must be smiling and bright all the time. Now, Monty Python, decades ago, did a sketch which Christians, because they don't think very deeply, took great offence at. And this was in the United Kingdom. As I said, it's part of our culture to say, often you will hear people say, oh, look on the bright side of life, people worse off than you, and, you're just feeling sorry for yourself, you've got to put yourself up. So you've got Jesus on the cross. Somebody's playing Jesus of the Monty Python team. He's got the crown of thorns. He's obviously in dire agony. Right, so he's portraying it brilliantly. And then you've got a group of people, I still laugh when I think about it, on the ground, and do you know what they're thinking? Always look on the bright side of life. Diddy, 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 diddy. This is what they're singing to Jesus. And the Christians took offence at this, because they thought they were mocking Jesus, but they weren't mocking Jesus. No Monty Python team would not mock Jesus being crucified. What they were mocking was people who say when to other people when they're in dire agony or suffering mentally or physically, always look on the bright side of life. My baby's just died. I've just rung to tell you my baby's just died. Always look on the bright side of life. Diddy, I'm just ringing to tell you my husband's been killed in a road crash. Always look on the bright side of life. Diddy. That's what they were doing. They were showing up this ridiculous idea that we should always be telling people who are suffering to cheer up and to stop feeling sorry for yourself. And you know, it's very, very clever. I mean, the non-Christians actually got this. They got this. They knew it. They were actually mocking this British view in our culture that you must all, you know, that this is what you say to everybody. And it's and people are using this saying inappropriately. If your teenage daughter is 14 and she gets dumped, then you might say to her, look dear, look, you know, look on the bright side, there's lots of lovely boys out there, you know, there's plenty more fish in the sea, you mustn't get down, look on the bright side, you're going to a disco next week, you might meet somebody nice. That is appropriate. Well, look on the bright side. You know, you know, there's lots. You know, you never know who you might meet. You know, there's loads of men out there. You go for an interview and you don't get the job. Somebody might say, well, you know, look on the bright side. You've already got some other applications in. You know, you could have a job next week. You don't know. I mean, you want to just keep applying for jobs. You know, no reason why you can't get a job. You know, keep your spirits up. So can you see, this is positive, it's used in a good way, and it's appropriate to the situation. But what often people do, and Christians do it, because they have this compulsion that you must be beaming and smiling in all circumstances, so that even when somebody has just died, you must look serene and peaceful. God forbid anybody should see you looking in a state. Oh, they're crying, all hysterical. No, they don't like it. And so this is compounded, it's made worse by the British culture, but this is part of Christianity. And I came down with clinical depression, which was a lot to do with the culture of Christianity and my, I'm sorry to say, experience of anti-Semitism, which I've documented in other videos. 50, I would say, of my time in the church and the distress and the fact that I wasn't liked, I think it was 50% because I was Jewish. I think a lot of the problems were 50% because I was simply for being Jewish. And I was constantly in a state of distress and upset because of so many incidents of anti-Semitism. Now, I know there's lots of Christians who are not anti-Semitic. I know that. But it just takes one and you're upset. Not long after, you get another incident, then you're upset again. So I came down with clinical depression, and I think even my doctor suspected it was to do with the church. I think she knew. She was very savvy, smart. And I do remember going to the shops and making a decision to just stop smiling. Do you know, when I made that decision, I felt fantastic. I felt liberated. I thought, I'm just going to be myself. I am just going to be myself. I'm sick of putting on this act of smiling all the time. I've been doing this for decades. I thought, no, I'm just not going to be smiling all the time. It doesn't mean I never smile. It means that I don't have to keep smiling all the time. It's like, if I go into a shop, oh, hi, it's just like I say, you say, hi, but you don't have to say, you don't have, hello. It's like, it's like, let's lower the light bulb. Let's take out the 1,000-watt light bulb. It's too bright. It's ridiculous. It's a 1,000-watt light bulb. Let's take it down and put up a 60-watt. This is far more sensible. Just be normal. Just be normal, like other people, the non-Christians. Oh, hi, are you all right? Yeah, all right. Yeah. Pleasant, congenial. I mean, we all have to make an effort, if you're not feeling well and things like that. You try and be pleasant, but it's just not overdoing it and not trying to be something that you're not. And I felt fantastic. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I felt I'd been released from prison. I felt released from prison. And I think probably from a mental health point of view, it was doing me good. And it was things like that, when I had the 2 years of clinical depression, that I had to think about. And I realised that all the depression was caused by the culture of evangelical Christianity. The reason I got sick was because of the culture, the ideas, the expectations. It was the culture, the religion of Christianity that made me sick. So I decided to withdraw and to not be involved in the church and just go to services. But even at services, I was hearing things which I didn't feel were good for me, for my mental and physical health. It's a very, very demanding culture. I mean, never mind the smiling. There's so many other things, but I don't sort of want to go off track. But I began to reevaluate the culture, because I suddenly realised I don't want to be smiling all the time. This is ridiculous. And then comments are passed. People pass comments and it's judgment. And they'll say things like, well, there's other people get toothache, you've got an abscess, but there's people suffering from cancer. So and so over there's got cancer, and she's still doing things for the church. She's bright and screen. They make you feel guilty as well. They make you feel guilty. So you're having to put on this act. And this can't be healthy. It wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for me. And so remember, we've got umpteen, since I became a believer in Jesus, how many people I knew that had died, and I'd been putting on this smiling image. I mean, can you think of, from a mental health point of view, the fact that I was not allowing myself to experience grief and things, because nobody wants to experience grief, right? Nobody wants to experience grief. But the culture of evangelical Christianity makes it worse, because they're demanding that you smile. So possibly you're not grieving as you should. That's one idea, is you're not grieving as you should. You're not allowing yourself to be upset and over things that it's appropriate to be upset about. Getting it out of your system, I suppose it's called, isn't it? I mean, I knew a girl, and she used to say to me, I've had a good cry. She didn't pass her nursing exams. And she said, I've had a good cry. I've got it out of my system, and I feel a lot better now. And we're going out clubbing. Right. I do remember her telling me that. And I really admired her for, I thought, that's good. She'd got it out of her system. She'd had a good cry. Then she had to think about everything, got some perspective on everything, and then she was getting on with her life, you see? Getting on with her life. But I wasn't doing that, and it's probably the same for lots of other people. And so I did notice a missionary, a person who's a missionary to the Jews, who is Jewish. So the person is not a non-Jew, they are Jewish. When they were talking about the synagogue and their childhood and things, and the synagogue and the Judaism, there was a look of contempt on their face. But as soon as they started talking about Jesus, they suddenly like so happy. And this is very common. I observed it, and it used to puzzle me. They never smile when they talk about God. Never. Evangelical Christians don't smile when they're talking about God. The only time they smile is when they're talking about Jesus. It gets a very, very big smile. And it used to puzzle me. And then I thought, well, I have to understand this. I feel it's very important to understand, why do people behave they do? What's going in their mind? And while they're smiling at the word Jesus, as soon as they say Jesus, it's smiling. But not with God. Not with the Holy Spirit, but it's to that name Jesus that suddenly gets them smiling. Now, I've got a guinea pig, and as you can see, I've just said the word guinea pig. Right, and I'm smiling because I love my guinea pig to bits. And I thought, well, if this is the way my guinea pig affects me, as soon as I say to somebody, they say, have you got any pets? And I say, I've got a guinea pig, and there's a big smile on my face. And I suddenly realised this is what it must be like for these people, that they're suddenly hearing the word Jesus and they're suddenly smiling. In terms of, I hear the word guinea pig and and I'm smiling. And of course I don't think Christians would like this analogy, a guinea pig and Jesus, but it's about what's making you happy. Now, my guinea pig makes me so happy. And I love her to bits. I love guinea pigs. Right, so it's all up here, so I'm feeling happy. Just talking about it. It just cheers me up. I immediately feel great, fantastic. And this must be what like with some evangelical Christians with the name Jesus, is they're suddenly all smiling. But you don't actually, obviously, what are they thinking? They're saying the name, but what are they thinking? I'm saying the name guinea pig, and I'm seeing my guinea pig running around and eating the food and munching the hay and everything. But so that always, when they say the word Jesus, Yeshua, there's a big smile. When they're talking about him, often the missionaries and that, they're smiling as well. And I'd love to know what's actually going through their mind, if they're imagining something, how they imagine him. But this smiling only happens when they talk about Yeshua and Jesus. They never start smiling when they talk about God. That's very interesting, I find. So and really, Christianity, it's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. And you have to understand, the more evangelical people are, the more emphasis there is put on Jesus. So it's almost like Jesus is at the top of the tree and God underneath. They would say, no, 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 God is there and Jesus is there, right? He's sitting at the right hand of God. But in practice, in their behaviour and everything, they seem to be, everything is Jesus. And this is what's making them smile. But that Jewish man who was a missionary to the Jews had a look of contempt when he was talking about his own people, the Jewish people and the synagogue. and Judaism. But in the next sentence, he's going to say he loves the Jewish people. But that facial expression says, no, to me, you don't. You hold Judaism and your people and your religion with total and utter contempt. Because the face said it all. The downed mouth. That's the facial expression when he was talking about Judaism and the synagogue. Contempt. Utter contempt. As soon as he says the word Yeshua, he's smiling. And isn't that awful that he mentions the word shul, synagogue, Judaism, and there's a look of contempt. But he's saying he loves the Jewish people. And, you know, as we know, body language says it, you know, who are you going to believe, the mouth or the facial expression? We all know it's going to be the facial expression. Because he probably didn't even realise he was doing it. So the missionary, they're in the street, or whether anybody talking to an evangelical Christian, they are smiling because they're at the back of their mind. Because I used to be like this, and other people have admitted to me that they're the same. They want to give a very good impression. They want you to see how happy they are, because if they can see how happy you are, and how glowing and radiant and serene and peaceful you are, that you will want to believe in Jesus. You will associate that happy, smiling, peaceful behaviour with Jesus, and then you will believe in him. You see. No evangelical organisation will want to take on a serious person. Probably like me now. So if I, but no, I mean, they wouldn't want me a Jews for Jesus, even when I was a Jewish believer in Jesus. They wouldn't want me. I know that, and I know the reason why. They want to control and manage people, and if they get a sniff of a thinking person, they're not going to have you doing anything for Jews for Jesus, because they want people to control and manage you. And so this is why you get so many non-Jews working for Jews for Judaism, because they are manageable. They're manageable. Wouldn't take somebody like me who'd studied theology, Jewish believer in Jesus for many years standing. They wouldn't take somebody like me as a volunteer, not even for 2 weeks, for a summer campaign. They wouldn't take somebody like me. And it's because they knew at that time that I was the sort of person that would ask questions and would challenge them on different things. Because that's how I've always been. It's just the way I'm made. And Christianity doesn't like that. Christianity, including Jews, they don't like that. They don't like questioning. I'm not talking about being rebellious and willful and like, I'm not going to do that, you said do that, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not talking about that. But you've got somebody with a bit up here questioning something. That's what they don't like. That's what they don't like. They have to be able to control and manage you and get you to do exactly what you want to do. And that does involve smiling a lot. And so they very well could sack a person if they're not smiling enough. If they observed somebody very, very serious there on the street, Jews for Judaism, looking very, very serious, never smiling, they might say, well, we don't want somebody like that because you're not smiling enough. You have to smile. But I mean, they didn't take me on for a summer campaign decades ago, not because of the smiling, but because the person knew, the head of Jews for Jesus knew, because I'd done a lot of writing, you see, and got published. The person knew that I might well question them, and I had questioned them in the past, you see. So They remembered that. Oh no, we're not having this one. This one could cause trouble. So they would rather have a non-Jewish person working for Jews for Jesus as a missionary than somebody like me who had decades of belief as a Jewish believer in Jesus and studied theology. So the control is the main thing. They have to control you. And if they see somebody who's asking questions, a thinker, anything like that, no, they don't want you. They don't want you. And it is the same with all these organisations, anything evangelical. And it's all about control and managing you and doing what you're supposed to do. But I don't want to go off the subject because this is about smiling. So I hope this has been interesting for you and given you an insight and to just make you think round the box and to realise that this smiling behaviour is complex. They might be happy that day, they might be having a good day, and we have the good days and we're feeling great. Hiya! It's lovely and sunny and we're feeling well and everything's nice and the sun's shining. Hiya, how are you doing? Oh, all right, how are you? We all have that, don't we? It could be that they're just naturally happy that day and that is just how they are that day. Or it could be they're masking something. Or it could be some people, it's a nervous thing. Some people smile a lot simply out of nerves. They're nervous, so they smile all the time. There are people that when they're talking all the time, doesn't matter what they're talking about, they will smile. That's their way of conveying. So they smile, but this is again could be taught by the parents. This is a learnt behaviour. So you must smile the whole time you're speaking. I watched a video of a lady, and the whole time she was talking, she was smiling. And it got a little bit inappropriate, because at the beginning of the video, obviously it was nice, she was smiling, introducing herself. But then it got a bit inappropriate, because she was still smiling when she was talking about certain things relating to constipation. And she was still smiling. And you sort of thought, well, this is a bit weird. She's smiling while she's going into the ins and outs about the intestines and the bowels and everything. And you suddenly realise this is inappropriate. But again, it's not her fault. She probably doesn't realise it. And it could be the way she's been told to behave as a child. It could be her mother or father said, you must always smile. You must always smile when you talk to people. So this can be, I would say, a learnt behaviour. A behaviour that you feel obliged to do, that you feel compelled to do, that you feel you're letting God down if you're not smiling. And I thank you very much for listening.